My whole thing is wanting to help women move forward through this because this felt like a slow kill. I felt like every day I was dying. I was watching myself erode in the mirror, not really wanting to be on this earth anymore. I can't control this. I think people need to have more care and compassion and humanity for one another, which I don't actually think exists on social media. Buy the hair, get the transplant, shave your head, do nothing, do all of it, but don't make your decisions based on society's perceptions of what will be. And yeah, I've been through to hell and back several times over.
Hair loss in women is often underreported and overlooked in our society. In this podcast, I sat down with the founder of the Women's Hair Loss Project, which is meant to unite women who are dealing with hair loss. She has been openly coping with and sharing her hair loss journey online for many years. She goes by Y to protect her anonymity. This podcast is sponsored by Feel Confident, which is an industry leader in premium yet affordable skincare and hair care. Make sure to check it out at feelconfident.com. So do women and men experience hair loss differently?
I think that they do. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind with that, which is both are obviously dramatically affected. I know a lot of times, women don't think that men are as affected as women, but I've been listening to men talk about hair loss for 20 years, on the radio. And so I know how affected they are. But for women, and you can tell me if this is the same for men, there is this massive loss of identity when you grow up believing that your hair is your crowning glory, it's everything that you're supposed to be, and you lose that part of yourself. It's like your femininity is gone. For me, losing my hair was equivalent to basically losing my arm. I know that is like, I don't say that to make light of it, but, at many times of my life, of my hair loss life, I was willing to do things like swap body parts if I could. I would have given up, even a breast. I would have given up a toe. I would have given up a kidney because I had two. Things like that are how heavy hair loss hits a woman. And I'm not the only one that feels like that. I don't know if men internalize it to that degree. You're a man, you could let me know if you've ever wanted to swap a kidney for your hair. But that tremendous loss of femininity and that stigma within society makes us a little bit of a pariah in trying to navigate this. It's like, how do you go out into the world and navigate being a balding woman? If you're a balding man and you're walking around, it's not that it's great, but nobody's going to be like, well, holy cow, there goes a balding man. But if you're a balding woman and you go out, people are for sure going to take notice that there's something basically wrong with you, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, I think societal perception for women to have like hair loss, and especially to be bald, we're not quite there yet, as a society, and accepting that at all. I mean, for men, I think there was more of an association with maybe, being of a certain type of character when you were bald versus now it's just a little bit more accepted that you don't have to be a skinhead to be bald. Like, you could just be like a normal guy who just losing hair and decides to shave his head. But for women, it's still, I think, not quite as accepted and a bigger issue probably emotionally.
And very misunderstood. I think that women's hair loss is tremendously misunderstood by society, by friends and family, because they don't know what that feels like unless you're experiencing it. I should note that even women experiencing hair loss experience it differently from woman to woman. So depending on where we started from, depending on how much we had, depending on how we were baked into this world and the tools that we were given, I think that in the women that I've communicated with and also myself, everybody kind of navigates it differently. Some not so bad, some pretty good, and some literally hit the floor, scrape their knees, and then fall through the floor. And that was me.
Yeah, I think some of what impacts on how we experience hair loss is like when it starts, like how young someone is, and also like the rate of loss, like if you lose it practically like overnight, like I kind of did, a couple months, but versus like a slow loss, I don't actually know which one's worse. You could probably make arguments, both ways, but I think surely like that matters, like the rate of loss, but also like some people, they have hair loss from the age of 2 or 3, or just born with like patches of loss or develop universalis when they're a couple of years old. and then others who develop in middle school, high school, college, and then, after that. So I think that also impacts, right, on the experience.
Yeah, and I used to think about that though when I was losing my hair. Well, I am losing my hair. I mean, female pattern baldness doesn't go away. I've had 25 years of female pattern baldness, 2 years of an inflammatory alopecia, but like early on, I used to wonder, would it have been just better if it just all fell out, like be over, done with, so you have to try to make this work? Because this felt like a slow kill. I felt like every day I was dying. I was watching myself erode in the mirror with no coping mechanism, no support. And that just leads to a tremendous amount of depression and not really wanting to be on this earth anymore. That's how heavy it was for me. But I just want to circle back to the man and woman thing, which is, it's more socially acceptable for a man to lose his hair, even though it doesn't feel great and men are affected. But it's more socially acceptable for women to wear hair. Or to do things for their hair.
Right.
Whereas if a man does it, I mean, I read comments on things. People are vicious. It's like they shouldn't be doing something, even a transplant. They shouldn't be wearing a hairpiece. Why not? There are great hairpieces out there for men as well. So they have to go to have surgery, even though maybe a hairpiece would have been right for them. So there's like some aspects, it's like women have the leg up on the hair wearing part, even though it's not great, but men have the leg up on at least society won't be like staring at you when you walk down the street,
Yeah.
Neither feels good though.
Right.
We just want our hair.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
At the end of the day, we just want our hair. We want to feel good and we want to feel accepted.
Yeah. That's
by
true.
ourselves and everybody else.
That's a really good point. So I guess bring me back to when the hair loss first started for you. Like how old were you? What were the circumstances?
Yeah, I was 21 years old and basically didn't know this at the time. So 1999. I didn't know this at the time, but getting off a birth control pill can kick in a person's genetic predisposition for androgenetic alopecia. Knock me over with a feather. I had no idea that I even had a genetic predisposition for androgenetic alopecia because all I saw in my family was hair. I thought, oh my God, am I going to go gray? My mom went gray. My dad died with no gray hair. I was like, maybe I'll be like my dad. I never once factored in hair loss as a possibility. So when this came to play, it was very obvious because I know that people say you lose 100 hairs a day or whatever, but I had very, very thick hair. It grew down to my butt. So it had a very long life cycle. And I didn't see it in the shower. I didn't see it on anything. So when it started falling out and it was all over my pillow, it was freaking me the hell out. So eventually the first thing I actually did is I saw my hairstylist, which I think a lot of people do, which is not really the first appropriate stop probably for your hair loss journey. But I was like, do you think it's thinner? And it was actually the shampoo person. Washing it, and she's like, yeah, it's quite a bit thinner. And I was like, so it's not in my brain.
So overall, it just looked and felt thinner.
It was like a complete,
everywhere.
It was like complete deflation of hair. It was like basically like your hair was, fuller, and then it was just like cut in volume. And then it was just flatter, and then that's how it kind of progressed with that overall diffuse thinning. And it would I actually went to multiple dermatologists locally in Los Angeles, and then I even drove to San Diego. I was willing to drive to see Vera Price in San Francisco. I was willing to do anything.
Of course.
I was willing to if you put it in my hand, I was willing to swallow it, as anybody most would when they're starting to lose up their hair. But it would take over a year for me to actually get a diagnosis, which is not a diagnosis that anybody wants, because up until that point, I was holding on to hope that this was stress, like it was people were saying. Even though I was thinking I was 21, the only stress I had going on in my life was that my hair was falling out, so I wasn't stressed. And then it took, an actual doctor that worked in the hair field in New York City to use I guess it was a dermoscopy or a densitometer to see the miniaturization of the follicle and to then say you have female pattern baldness. And he was actually the one that and not many at that time are willing to admit or say that the birth control pill, can be a cause for kicking in a person's genetic predisposition, but he was willing to. And he was like, that was probably likely the trigger to this situation.
Yeah, interesting. And was there a time early on when you knew that the hair was, thinning out and everything, but people were like, oh, it still looks fine? I feel like sometimes with female pattern loss, it kind of has that effect, and it's easy to be like, oh, that still looks like a full head of hair. But then when you compare it back, it's like, wow, the volume is like half of what it was. And then some people experience certain specific areas centrally, let's say, that have really thinned out so much that you can start to see a real widened part. Did you have that where people are saying like, oh, it actually still looks fine?
That's the story of my life. Because if you're born with enough hair for 3 people, that means you get to live a very long time with still looking like you have more hair. Like this level of density would be like 7 years into my hair loss. So just for perspective, that's like, it's flatter. It's not as voluminous. It's all that. So people would see me and they would be like, what's the big deal? I don't even know what you're complaining about. You still have more than most people were born with. Well, that's great. That's so reassuring. It's not what I'm still losing myself every day. It's not like you push the stop button and we get to stop at this level. Everybody just wants to get back to where they were before. And that's the thing with also like, it actually is the same thing in wigs. It's like people want to get to where they were. So some people are going to want more density in a wig. Some people are going to want less density in a wig. We all want to just feel like us at the end of the day in every which way. And even still to this day, with a shaved head, people will come online and dismiss my hair loss because they will say, I see follicles. It looks like you shaved your head by choice. And I'm like, let me tell you something. I have had hair loss for 25 years. I only shaved my head after getting an autoimmune non-scarring inflammatory alopecia. If I had an alternative, I guarantee you, I would not have shaved my head.
Right.
This
when
was
did you shave for the
I
first
shaved
time?
it May 7th, 2023.
Oh, 2023. Okay. So pretty recent.
So yeah, so I got the inflammatory alopecia after my father died February 2022. And I saw a dermatologist and she kind of, based on the history that I gave to her with my father's death, and then there was a lot of surrounding circumstances that I'm a very allergic person. So, I mean, you name it, I probably have it, you know. And she says, based on all the allergy assaults in my system, with the death of my father, she's like, that is probably what kicked this part in, the autoimmune, non-scarring inflammatory alopecia.
Right. Okay, got it. And then can you share some of the like maybe medical treatments that they offered you like in the earlier days and then more recently?
Absolutely. Would love to. So I did, let's see, I took, well, when I had nobody to give me anything, I just did what everybody does and get saw palmetto.
Right.
Nothing. And I gave me nothing. And then I took Nioxin because I went to the hair salon. That gave me nothing. And then at the dermatologist, I was given 5% Rogaine. That didn't actually help me either. I was given Propecia very early on. And then I was also put on 200 milligrams of Aldactone because I was told that the only level amount that would be efficacious in my situation or in female pattern baldness was 200 milligrams. And then I was told, and this was my biggest regret, was they said, if you get back on a hair-friendly pill, I don't think there's actually such a thing as a hair-friendly pill because every single pill that's listed as a hair-friendly pill in the last 17 years, somebody told me they believe that caused their hair loss. So they put me back on the pill. And I always regretted that because I was like, did I make myself worse? And what ended up happening was I ended up feeling trapped on this medication because now I was scared. Because you can shed going on anything, you can shed coming off. I know what the pill did the first time. So I was stuck actually on both Aldactone for 13 years because I was scared to get off. And I was stuck on the orthotricycline for 13 years. And it's a terrible feeling when you're taking a medication. You don't see it doing anything. And you're just trapped, you know, and you also have some side effects from these things, but you're just living with it because you don't know what to do. And I also did PRP for 14 years, by the way, flying from Los Angeles to Florida every 4 to 5 months to have that treatment because that's where I felt good about going. So I kept that schedule every 4 to 5 months for 14 years. And when people ask me, do you think PRP works? I think PRP works when it's done by a certain person that knows how to maximize it. I don't think that everybody's using it or doing it to the degree that it needs to be done to even affect change. But I wouldn't have been spending that money and time for 14 years. And, you know, if I didn't think that it had benefit, I definitely think it slowed the progression of my hair loss. It helped to give me a better integrity to the quality of the hair, initially better pigment. And I slowed the shedding, if I didn't say that, but it slowed the shedding. And that worked until it didn't work. And you know when it stopped working?
When was that?
When I got the second hair loss.
Okay.
So,
And oral minoxidil, did they ever try that for you?
so I was prescribed that 3 times, but I didn't take it because 3 different doctors prescribed it to me. But the reason why I didn't get on oral minoxidil, because this was just recent that it was done, is that I feel like I run the gamut of systemic medications that I want to take or I'm willing to take.
Right.
I started wearing wigs in 2012. I wanted to put this part behind me, and the only thing I was willing to do was PRP. Until January of 2023, I had my last treatment because after 3 failed treatments, I could no longer justify flying from LA to Florida after the 3rd fail. So it was, again, I don't know, it's supposed to work against non-scarring inflammation. I don't know. It didn't work for me. It didn't do anything. Yeah.
And then, so how did it feel that first time when you shaved your head?
Oh my God. So it was the feeling, leading up to it was terrifying. It's beyond terrifying. And I was tortured within myself because I've lived with hair loss long enough to know that you have to do the thing you need to do sooner than later or you lose years of your life, And I knew the only thing that I could do, because I had a very short haircut since 2012, but the only thing left in my arsenal, there's no shorter haircut I could do. It wouldn't look good. It was looking like creature-ish. It was like blowing out, it looked like creature-ish. So the only thing I could do was shave it. So I knew I had to do this one thing. I couldn't make it happen. And for months on end, I lived tortured. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I wore a beanie cap on my head or a wig. I brushed my teeth in a beanie cap. I just couldn't stare at this pattern. So I knew that shaving would set me free, but I also couldn't pull the trigger. Many times I sat there, cried with the shaver, couldn't pull the trigger. On May 7th of last year, I was visiting my friend who also does some of my wig stylists to purchase a wig, but also I brought my shaver. And I was like, if I get the balls to just say, can you do this for me? And, I asked her, I was like, do you think I should do this? I needed some kind of confirmation, or I need somebody else to give me some kind of a push. And she did not stutter. She was like, you 10,000% need to do this. You are dying. She's known me forever. I've known her since 2015. She's like, you were dying. And I was dying inside. This second hair loss, with what it was doing to me, it took away my ability to wear a different type of wig, which is a whole different wig conversation. These are lace fronts. That's not what I had. After she gave me that permission that I guess maybe I needed, and then she was also holding the shaver, right? Because it's easier to have someone else punch you in the face, or is it easier to punch yourself in the face? So she punched me in the face, but with love. And I did not cry on this day. This was I cannot tell you now it looked weird for me. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, who invited my brother here? Because it was like my brother staring back at me all of a sudden, right? I was like, didn't see that one before. I was like, hey, but I felt the utmost relief, joy. I have there was not one tear that was shed.
Wow.
All the tears were shed before I shaved. That day was nothing but happiness. I came home. I went on Instagram. I left a long ass story, albeit with a little bit of wine in me. But but it came through and just let people know how relieved I was. The next day, I left a more coherent video and just shared. Now, at the time, I wasn't willing to show my shaved head. So I still had a wig on or a beanie on. And when I went online to share my story about this big thing I was excited about, I actually got crap. You can imagine you can get crap for sharing a story like this because people came out with there's no way you shaved your head. That's not a wig. There's no way a wig can look that good. It would have to be a very expensive wig. Yeah, I know.
So you did not wear wigs before that time?
I wore wigs since 2012.
Oh yeah. So
I wore wigs, but I never showed my hair.
Oh, okay.
I never showed my hair at all. Only until I shaved my head. And the only reason why I did it was because shaving my head has got to be the hardest thing that I've done in my hair loss life. And I know my whole thing is wanting to help women move forward through this. And I know that I was helped by seeing other women, that had done this and lived this way. So I was like, if I can push myself to do that, I would be wanting to do it. But I wasn't able to do it on that day. And so for that, I had comments. It actually kind of crushed me a little bit. It broke me down a little bit. I had a mental breakdown because here I'm coping with my new reflection. I got people dismissing my situation, saying I'm a liar because I'm not willing to show it. It's like, I can tell you I have boobs. Do you believe me? I need to show them,
Right. So you had the head shaved, but then you were still wearing the wigs and you weren't willing to, you were telling them that you shaved the head, but they wanted to see it.
They want to see it. You got to see it to believe it. That's not good enough to just say that you did it. Otherwise you're just lying. But that's why I keep saying that to people, is like, you people believe I have boobs. Like, why? I mean, I need to prove them to you. Yeah. But it took me a while to be able to work up the courage to be able to show my head. And then when I did show my head, I still got crap.
What were they? But like crap from like people who were following you for a long time, or like new people who were just discovering you think, or both?
Both. So it's both. Believe it or not, it was surprising. I think it's not as surprising when it's the people that just find you on the fly. Your thing flew past them, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You look like you have hair on your head and you shave by choice. Okay, you try it. You let me know how that goes, lady.
Yeah.
And then you had people that were actually women with hair loss that had been following me forever, that all of a sudden were like, it doesn't even look like you have hair loss. I've been online for 17 years. I've devoted 17 years of my life to helping women. Now, this would be some crazy story if I had just been doing this for, just shits and giggles.
Right. Okay, nothing better to do.
I got nothing better to do for 17 years,
Yeah.
So that was hard. So when I was getting that flack, I did actually have a mental breakdown last year that a lot of people didn't know about, because I was like trying to cope with my new reality, adjust to a new type of wig, and still having to shave my head. I can't shave it easily. I'm prone to folliculitis. So I actually have to treat my folliculitis to be able to shave my head. Right. I actually had to take doxycycline, and, I have to use clindamycin. So to shave my head, I have to use treatment.
Just when you thought you were getting away from the systemic medication.
So you have to think of the craziness, the level the degree that a person must need to go to have to do this has to be pretty extreme. Yeah.
To get hate for that is just pretty despicable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that one question here about social media and what that's done for our just perception of hair loss and how people kind of treat each other, and I'm sure there's a lot we could say about that. But any initial thoughts? And some of it you've already explained essentially with your own story. But
about how people treat
like how social media and everyone just being online has kind of changed how we think about hair loss, for maybe increasing acceptance or the other way, because now it's like you're always in front of a camera, especially if you're a content creator, and you're just trying to look your best, whatever that means, and trying not to get too many people to hate on you. And I think for some people that makes them, care a lot more about their hair, even if they have very minimal hair loss and it overall looks great, but they get maybe more, just worried about it, because if one person makes a comment, if the hair just blows in the wind and it's like, oh, look at that recession that you have, there's just more commentary about it.
There's commentary in general on people's, it's also used, it really bothers me actually, it's used as it's an insult. Like, it's an insult to somebody. Like, if you want to insult the person, well, then pick something else, like their personality. Why are you if that's a crappy personality, pick on their personality. Why are you picking on a physical attribute? It's like, I have asthma. Like, you're going to pick on me for my asthma? I can't control this. I think people need to have more care and compassion and humanity for one another, which I don't actually think exists on social media. Not that I've seen.
There's not enough. I would agree with that. Oftentimes I hear, why would I trust you? Like, you have no hair. If any of these things worked, then you'd have hair, kind of like, similar to the saying of never trust a skinny chef,
Right.
So I've heard that before, for my case, and people just, they don't want to take the time, I think, to look into the nuances of what's going on, and it's confusing to people. Why is there this guy talking about hair loss and potential treatments when he himself is bald? Or it's confusing that someone has a wig on, but they're talking about their hair loss journey and how they just recently shaved their head and how difficult it was emotionally. But then you have the wig, so then they don't trust you, they don't believe it. So it's I think people want to see black and white, and they are very quick to judge, and they're not comfortable with that gray area. I think humans in general, it's just like, Democrat versus Republican. It's like, it's not usually so black and white.
No.
There's issues you might agree with on, with one party and then agree on other issues with another party. And I think that's more reality, or, there's a lot of things where it's just like there's spectrums of it. It's not always so black and white, but your brain has to like wrestle with these things if you're open to understanding the complexities, but many people are not.
Many people are not. And, I would think, but it's the mindset on that. I would think that people would be more apt to want to see you actually for, a hair transplant procedure because you are a person with hair loss, that you do understand what that is like. It's hard. It's very difficult to connect to any individual. And I know that there are a lot of good surgeons and they don't have hair loss, but it's very difficult to connect to on that level. If you're not going through it, it's almost nearly impossible. And so that gives you a greater connection to the person coming in because I don't think it's easy when people go, so it has to be hard for transplants, but when women are going to go look for a wig, it's like it's terrifying. It's like they can't go, they're scared. But if they're going to somebody that they know is dealing with it or, is there with them, supporting them that is gone through it as well, it makes it an easier process. So it's like, you get it. You didn't have a transplant, but you understand the difficulty and what it means and the significance of hair, the massive significance of hair.
Right.
People that dismiss hair loss or anybody that says, it's just hair, to me, if it's a woman that's saying it, it's like that's a woman that never lost her hair, or she's in the 0.01 percentile of people that is okay with it. Like maybe she was bald since birth, and that's her identity. But it is not what I've encountered. I encounter women that have lost 3 decades of their life. They're still writing me. They can't move forward. They can't move the needle. They can't at all. They can't even get a wig. Mm-hmm. Not because they can't afford a wig. They can't get the wig because they can't process how this will be, how society will look at them. How will this be okay? And that's what I do try to get across, is that when it is okay to do whatever you want to do, to live your life, because this is your life,
Totally.
And at the end of the day, when we're dying and we're in our grave, nobody's going to give the award for the best hair ever. Yeah. So what matters is how we live. What matters is, communication and interacting and who we are for our friends or in our family and what we give back to the world, not who had the best hair ever. So buy the hair, get the transplant, shave your head, do nothing, do all of it, but don't make your decisions based on society's perceptions of what will be.
Yeah, for sure. You can never please everybody. I mean, you can have the best head of hair, then someone will point out another feature about you that they don't like. So you can't keep chasing that. I agree. So then tell me more about the Women's Hair Loss Project, like when it started, what it does, beyond just being kind of a community, but I'm sure there's a lot that you do, like you were saying, that people write to you, and constantly kind of having to help women in different hair loss situations. But yeah, just kind of give me more info on that.
In 2007, which is from 1999 to 2007, it's still comparatively to 25 years. It's still in the early-ish part of my hair loss, but it didn't matter. I had lost so much of myself already that I didn't know what to do anymore, period. I didn't know there's nothing else. I literally thought, hand to God, I was the only woman this was happening to. There's no other woman this is happening to in her 20s. It's just me. I don't know how this is. So that it's not that you want, by the way, somebody else to be suffering, but there is something to be said for, a connection with another person that gets it. And so I started blogging my journey day in and day out of the struggles that I was dealing with, of living in my, 20s, being a woman with hair loss. And then it was almost like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Yeah. Eventually, one person found me. I always remember the person that found me, Mia, and she left a comment, and I was like sitting watching TV, and I was like, I'm not the only one. It's me and Mia. It's us too, right? And then from that, it's another person came in. And when enough people came in, I was like, oh, why don't I attach a social network to it? So in 2008, I put on a social network, like similar to a Facebook-y thing, onto it. And then women signed up for that. They created profiles. They connected with one another. And then there was this community of women. Now, while this isn't a cure for hair loss, there is something to be said for the healing aspect of community. And I think before that day, that time, I never understood, like, why are people sitting in a circle? What are they doing talking to each other? How are they going to heal from this process? You sit there and tell your problems. But then I got it, because there's so much power in connecting with somebody that gets you. They understand those feelings that nobody understands you pasting the hair on the wall, counting it 500 times till you break down and have to get dragged out of the shower. Nobody understands what that's like. So even if you're still dealing with hair loss, once you have that connection with another human being or multiple people, it begins the process of healing. So that's how it moved from the blog to the network. And then social media came into play. And then I didn't really start using much of Instagram until the past several years. But now I find that's a really great way to get my message out there and connect with people that I would not have otherwise. Yeah. But ultimately, wanting to, share about the dangers of what is out there, to be careful. Don't get taken advantage of. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But more so, I think what I speak to is in the living with hair loss, which I think is the most difficult thing to do. Yeah, we can go down the list. You can tell me what treatments I should take, but how does somebody figure out how to live with hair loss? I have figured out how to live with hair loss difficultly. It was difficult, but then how do you try to communicate that and try to instill that into other people? And I think the only way you can do that is by sharing your story, sharing your words, interacting with people, and putting. I've lost my thought,
That's
but
great.
putting that message of acceptance out there. Showing yourself living in that acceptance. I will go to a restaurant and take my hair off. Mm-hmm. The waiter goes away. He comes back. My hair's off my head. Now, people will be like, why did you do that? Whatever. I used to go to therapy for anxiety. And one of the things you learn in therapy is exposure therapy.
Right.
And so I wanted to conquer this whole thing, the fear of somebody finding out that I wore a wig, but I wanted to do this double time. I didn't want to live under the thumb of hair loss. It had taken over a decade of my life by the time I started wearing wigs, which was in 2012. I wanted to move quickly. And to move quickly, I became the oversharer. You would be sitting next to me somewhere. I would just tell you I was wearing a wig. You didn't believe me? I would tell you to feel it. I'd take my wig right off and stick it on the table. I did all these weird things that sometimes people are like, well, that's weird. Why would you do that? But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of anybody knowing I wear hair. I'm not afraid of taking my hair off here and now because it's shaved. The creature-ish look I couldn't deal with. That was not acceptable for me. That's why the shave works better, But I want women to be free. A lot of women are held back by the perception of their friends, their family, their coworkers, and society, and what that will look like if they choose to wear a wig. And none of those people are living their life. So you're giving up your life for somebody else's thoughts,
As part of the network, are there in-person events or is it mostly just everyone's online?
So it's online. At some point, I hope to maybe do more like a kind of a retreat. Because people have asked me to do that for years and years. I mean, there's an ancient poll on my site from 2007. It says, if there was a conference, would you attend? No, it's from 2007. It's so friggin' old. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been a thought for a long time, but it was a lot said yes. And then it was some said maybe. And then there was a little bit that said no. But in general, with where we are now, there's much more online about female hair loss and women having hair accounts that I actually think that, for sure now it has a place.
Right,
no doubt.
But some people might feel more comfortable just behind their computer.
Well, for sure.
Safer and all that.
It's
so
safer.
It makes sense, Yeah, totally. Something that you mentioned resonated with me in that I think sometimes sharing more actually helps us cope. And that's what you were kind of getting at, I think. And I felt a very similar type of phenomenon. It was during COVID when I started to lose all my hair from this autoimmune condition. And it was actually also around the time when I started the YouTube channel and, things kind of went from there. But for me, I was this, relatively young hair transplant surgeon losing his hair. And I had a really full head of hair, Norwood zero, for, up until age 34. So I didn't really know what it was like to lose hair. So it was kind of a very abrupt change for me. And being out there and talking about it and educating people. And I love the fact that people were confused, like why can't you just, get a transplant? And it's like, oh, well, let me tell you about different types of, hair loss conditions. And so it was a great opportunity to educate. But honestly, talking about it like helped me also cope with it. It's like, yeah, let me show you what's going on. Let me tell you about all the treatments that I'm on. So it's almost like that. I'm with you on that. The oversharing that allows you to kind of get through it.
It's
Right.
healing for you.
Catharsis.
It's catharsis. It's also, I think it's taking your power back. It's like something hair loss makes us feel so powerless. And that's one way to take your power back. So the fear of women is that people will find out. The fear of women is that there's someone's going to know. Let's just take off the fear. I mean, I know it's not for everybody, but if we remove that, you can live a much more free life. Doesn't mean that every day is roses. It doesn't mean that there aren't some days that suck and I'm running pimples over my shaver. It doesn't mean that there aren't ups and downs, but it means that you're not living in fear. You're not living in fear of hair loss and what that means in your life.
Yeah, totally. On the topic of wigs, because I know you have a ton of experience with that, well, I find it interesting because it seems to me like I might be misinterpreting this, but many women wear like extensions just to like amplify what they already have. They might have very little to no hair loss, but they just put these extensions in, and whether it's a different color or just for the hair to look longer or fuller, it seems like it's super common. Again, I don't know a ton about that, but from, I don't know, what I gather just in society and I guess women I know. And so like, I don't know, they're comfortable maybe doing that, but then if they're actually having hair loss and they need to get a wig to cover up some of the hair loss, maybe then they get much more uncomfortable. But I don't know if you can speak to like that sort of difference.
For sure. So extensions I think this is also why more awareness has to be actually discussed on what they call alternative hair, which is wigs, toppers, and extensions even. But extensions are mainstream. Celebrities do them. I mean, people have been doing them forever. So that is socially acceptable. So if you have hair loss and you go get hair extensions, well, you got hair extensions. Okay, that makes sense. What doesn't make sense for people is when you're now stepping up, you're branching out. So the topper still makes more sense. I'll explain what that is before the wig. But the wig is the big one where people start looking at you like you have 3 heads, and why would you want to put a wig on your head? And like it's this like terrible thing. They're thinking of like, I was telling, him earlier, they were thinking of like the rocking chair Tweety Bird lady, with the powdered wig. That's the vision of what a wig is. That's also why I wanted to put out, I didn't share that part, but for many years I didn't show my face online. I didn't show my face online until I started wearing wigs, until 2012. And then I did it with sunglasses until 2015. I was making videos indoors on YouTube and on my website with sunglasses because I was somehow concealing myself from what? In 2015, I took my sunglasses off. But that's how affected I was. But anyways, so extensions are accepted because they're accepted by society. That's like, oh, it's cool. You're getting good extensions. There's different levels of them. It's like, it's like a nice handbag.
Yeah.
A topper is now, it's a material like this that has clips clipping around, and then it covers what is the main area that women are often dealing with, the pumpkin top. You can think of the pumpkin top of the head is covering that. A lot of women have that crown thinning. And then there's different base sizes. So you can start with like a little baby one, and then they can grow out they almost grow into a wig, but they can grow all the way out. And so part of topper selection is knowing what you need, but also like people want to start with a baby topper when sometimes they should start with a bigger topper because more dense hair probably exists here. So you're clipping into hair here, it's more likely to rip. And so a bigger topper would be better, but they go with the smaller topper because that's more acceptable. We're not ready to grow into the topper yet. So then there's topper stages. Now you have the wig stage. I flew past toppers, by the way. I flew right into wigs because by the time I went to go get it, my hair couldn't sustain the clips, But wigs, that's just the end all be all of like people just don't know. They're like, WTF, like what is this? Like why would you put a wig on your head? Like they don't understand it. Even today, people will tell me because they see me online with a shaved head and a wig and they're like, I don't understand why you're wearing a wig. Why would you be wearing a wig? Well, because I want to have hair. I was born with hair. I like how I look with hair. And it's not my preferred look. It'd be different if I loved how I look with a shaved head. I don't. I accept it, which is different than loving it. Yeah. We can do things that we need to do to help us live our life and not actually love it.
Yeah.
I don't love wearing wigs. I love what it gives me. I don't love shaving my head. I love what it gives me, you know? But that's why like extensions are way more acceptable than a wig. And I think it has nothing more to do than society's perception and the lack of awareness that exists about toppers and wigs and how life-changing they are for people.
With a wig, is it always like some form of a glue that's required to keep it there?
Well, there's glueless. So this is a glueless wig.
Okay.
So you have two main types of wigs, which is like, well, yeah, there's a lot of categories on here. This would be a wig show if we go here, but like
it's complicated, I don't.
So
know
I'll start with.
Yeah.
I'll do this. So I'll tell you why I had to switch types of wigs, which is the type of wig I used to wear is called a closed front or a hard front. That means the front of the wig is going to look very harsh. You're going to put it on your head. It's going to be like you're going to see that line. And what that's meant to do is you blend your hairline from ear to ear and it blends behind. It blends very well. It looks seamless. I wore my wig that way until I got a second hair loss. Now, when my hairline got knocked out, now you can't do that anymore because you got no hair to blend. So then this is a lace front wig. So there's lace and it's meant to recreate your hairline. But much like in hair transplantation, there is an art in the creation of wigs because I had a hairline that I don't know if it's unusual, but my hairline came inwards and it was very low to where they had to wax through the eyebrow area. And so wigs are typically made in one standard format with the lace, which won't frame my face right, which is why I came from Pomona, New York, because I go to a place over there, Dini Wigs, that is able to create the hairline that I want, much like an artist would for a hair transplant. You know, not every company can do that or has the capability to do that. Yeah.
And what's the material of wig? Is it always the same, or like is there more like natural hair and then synthetic ones, or?
So there's of course synthetic wigs. There's different cap types as well. So I've always worn human hair wigs, but there's different grades or different types of human hair wigs. There's, Brazilian hair, there's Indian hair. This is European hair. There's all different types of hair. And then there's different types of synthetics. You have synthetic that will melt if you go, into the oven. Then you have heat-defying synthetics. And then you have the cap constructions of the wigs, which is you have ones that are hand-tied, which are the most comfortable, which means every single hair was sewn into that one by one, which creates for a more realistic looking wig and movement because it has like a 360 degree movement of the hair, as opposed to if you sew it on a weft, this is a wefted wig. The wefts move like this, right? Because it's weft, it's sewn across. So typically hand-tied wigs will be more expensive within the company's line than the closed wefted wig. And I know this sounds so bizarre and confusing because it's like, it makes sense to me, but when I feel
it's like a whole other world.
But I might as well be, I feel like sometimes I'm like, it could be speaking another language.
No, a lot of these terms are new, honestly, for me. So I imagine most of my viewers are going to lost at this point. The guys especially, totally lost. But that's good. I mean, we're all learning here. So that's interesting. And then where do people go to find a good wig place? How do you find one?
So that's a good
Google it.
That's a great shop. This is a complicated question. So the reason why it's complicated is because I feel like it's very individual. Also, cost is a factor for what people can afford, and it also, I should say, doesn't necessarily mean that if you spent more money you're going to be happier either. You also need to be willing to accept wearing a wig. You could give somebody a $15,000 wig and they're not into it. They will think you handed them a lump of coal. They will not be happy. It doesn't matter what it looks like because they're not. You have to be willing to accept this into your life, or it doesn't matter what it is. I get that all the time where people want me to say, "What brands do you recommend?" Because people want brand recommendations, but I don't want to, and I actually never have. I don't want. That's why I also don't work with brands. I've been offered to work with they would give you a wig, give me a wig and say for this, and I don't do any of those because I have to be completely authentic and true to what I'm doing. And how can I speak about this wig? I wouldn't be able to if it's not something that I'm going to be putting on my head. And, I have to I don't know. A lot of people do that. I can't manage to do it. I can't in good conscience speak about something that I'm not actively doing myself. So I always tell people it's very hard for me to recommend brands. I can recommend people. And the reason why I say that is because the person that you see when you are getting your wig, I think is sometimes even more important than the wig itself. The person that's helping you in that interaction. Are they cold, callous? Did they dismiss you? Do they have no connection with you whatsoever? Are they not getting it? That can make it or break it for a person.
They also have to make it work on your head, right? It seems like you can't just buy the wig, but you gotta they have to frame your face.
You would think that would be the case, but they're supposed to. A good company will do that. Okay. Yes, a good company will do that, but not all companies will do that. So sometimes, yes, you are getting the wig out of the box and you throw it on your head and you you hope for the best.
Line it up. You're good to go.
But so I always say, that's why if I ever speak about anything, if it comes out of my mouth, that's why whenever people question me about PRP, is that if it's coming out of my mouth, I can tell you I 10,000% believe in it. My integrity means everything to me. I think I've built that in 17 years. So I can't just take a product, throw it on my head and review it. You can also basically make almost anything look good, by the way, online and misrepresent the product. Not saying that people do that. I'm just saying you can do it. And I don't want to be beholden to a company I'd rather just do my own thing, share my experiences, share the benefits of living, with a wig and what you can do and, what do you call it, styling it, caring for it, that kind of thing. Yeah. But people, I know good people. I know good, solid people that at least I know if you go see this person, you may not find a wig. Maybe it's out of your price range. Maybe you don't like the wig, but you will not leave there in tears. They may cry with you because they're so compassionate. You will have a good experience, and that may lead you to the next time when you go somewhere else. That levels you up to have the ability to try again. If your first experience is a crapper, you may never try again for another 10 years. So sometimes I think who you see is more important than the brand itself.
Yeah.
And that's worth considering, really vetting the person you're considering entrusting your life with. Because I see it that way. It's entrusting my life. Wigs are life-changing. They are my life. I don't know where I would be without them. And for a lot of women, they wear them morning to night. I know women that their husbands haven't seen them without their hair. And people were like, that's not possible. Well, I don't think they're blowing smoke up my butt. I'm pretty sure they're telling me the truth. I've mentioned it more than once. People have commented and said it was true. Or they wear it, morning all the way to night and then transition into a cap and then put it on immediately.
Sure.
Or they do bonding and they glue it on and they live with it, 24/7.
Swimming it with it.
Swim it, do the whole bit. The bonding is a whole other aspect of hair replacement that, would work for some women. And then you're living in it all the time. Yeah. So I wish I had the end all be all, this is where you go. But I could never take on that responsibility for, a person. You know what I mean? This is because let's say the brand that I went to today, I'm working with them because they're able to provide what I need.
Yeah, it works for you. It
might
not
work for me,
for everyone
but
who's
it may not work
listening to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But so is it when you go to a place to get it fitted and all that, they have their own brand that they make, or there's only a few big brands and then you have places that can apply? It's a
great question. So there's a lot. So there's a lot of on Instagram. What happens is there's these Chinese manufacturers that, I've been getting these emails since the dawn of time where they're willing to sell you a batch of wigs, whatever. So what happens is people will begin their own brand. They're like Instagram brands. They'll begin their own brand by working with these manufacturers. And some of them evolve pretty in depth where they have a relationship and the brand evolves. Yeah. Some are only ordering a few at a time, coloring, cutting, selling them piece by piece. So there's that way. And that's not really a brand in the sense of they have a factory. They control every aspect of it. So Filia, which is what I wore primarily since 2012, they have their own factory. Genie Wigs, which is in Pomona, New York, they have their own factory. So these are people that have control over every aspect.
The more custom type of process.
There's more. You can do more with the repair. There's more that they can do with customization. They have more control because they own the factory. If you don't own the factory, you're almost buying. It's almost white labeling.
Oh yeah,
kind of. You're a little bit more. You're a little limited in what you can do. You can do styling. You can do cutting. You can do coloring. But the customization process is going to be more difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Similar even with the products that we recently made, you can easily go to a manufacturer and say, I want a moisturizer, and they just take their base and then you could just throw in a couple of ingredients. Versus making it from scratch with a chemist where every little parameter can be adjusted. So, something similar to that, but a lot of people white label, it's quicker, it's easier, and throw their name on it. But yeah, it's very fascinating. And then in terms of cost, I mean, what's like the wide range, like in the, if you get the thing from China versus like getting this very customized
So
wig?
I'd say if you're wanting, I'd say the least expensive I think you can probably get for they have what they call budget-friendly human hair wigs, which is going to go below what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about budget-friendly. That's under $1,000. But in the human hair market, you're going to start at the lowest possible end I think I've seen is $1,500. Now, the sky is the limit. You can go to $15,000 and probably a little bit beyond. So you have this wide gap of that.
And they'll last on average how long? Like one
That's a great
wig?
question as well, because I think, when I started wearing wigs, I just started getting a bunch because I was like, oh my God, what is this? Where's this been all my life?
Yeah.
And so I was rotating through them all the time. So I never wore one wig long enough to know how long one will blow out. But I will say, I did ask a good friend of mine that does deal with clients that do wear her wig like every single day and stuff like that. And you're looking like, if it's cared for really well, I think like 2 years, I feel.
Okay.
I think some people will think that's on the low end because people may say that it's going to last 4 or 5 or 6. Of course, they're going to say that. They're also going to tell you not to wash your wig, until you do it every month or every other month. I can't do that. Like how often you wash your wig is going to contribute to how fast the wig is going to possibly decline, shed, the color. You can have it recolored, but all of it contributes to the hair falling apart. So the true test of a wig would be like someone takes one wig, washes it as much as they want forever, like for every single, once a week, wear it every single day, and tell me what it looks like at the end of 1 year. Tell me what it looks like at the end of 2 years. I got a feeling that thing ain't making it to 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's also the way the person wears it. If a person can wash it less, it'll last longer. If a person's caring for it like a baby, it can last longer. If the person's not using heat tools, it can last longer.
Right.
All these things contribute to it.
Interesting. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's it's the whole thing on itself, right?
Yeah,
it's a whole different world.
So let's talk about hair transplants for women.
Okay.
I know that, some of it is potentially controversial.
Yes.
But I want to hear your thoughts. And I can tell you, I'll start off by just telling you the most of my practice for hair loss, it's men, 90%. And that's when they've polled different transplant clinics. That's pretty common, for around that percentage, about 90% men, 10% women. And when I think about the actual surgeries that I'm doing for women, it tends to be mostly hairline lowering surgery, mostly younger women, and eyebrow hair transplants, probably the two most common types. When it comes to androgenic alopecia, I don't operate that often really at all on women with female pattern loss, unless it's very stable and they've had it for a long, long time. So that's kind of where I'm at in my clinic, as far as women's, especially hair surgery. I mean, we do see many women with just hair loss, and we try with medical therapy, with PRP to help them out. I mean, as your story is illustrating, it's difficult. It's difficult to treat, and it's hard to we don't want to keep treating them with PRP. It's not. We don't just. I mean, if we're not seeing any change, if they're not, if there's no stability, we're not going to even offer to keep doing it.
Right.
It's just that's not the right thing. So definitely options are limited, but we at least try. We try to see if there's some other underlying conditions, some blood work, whatever we can do to try to help. But I want to hear your thoughts on that topic.
So I basically have been pretty much of the mindset that women with typical diffuse pattern, female pattern baldness are not traditionally candidates, and that there is a very small percentage of the female population that actually does have a stable donor area. It's this big, but they do exist. And in those cases, then yes, that woman, in my opinion, would be a candidate. But I've talked about transplants enough where women have come out and shared their hair transplant experiences, and I can tell you that nobody said anything good. They've all felt their money was gone, they lost more hair, and some of them had scars, and they were in a wig anyway. So,
Yeah.
they felt like they they should have just gone for the wig.
Yeah.
But, I think that also had to do with poor patient selection on the, the physician's part to know
Right.
I always knew I knew from the get-go I could never have a transplant. If you move the hair, it's going to fall out tomorrow. So what would be, for me, like, what would be the point in that? So I've always felt women with classical female pattern baldness of overall diffuse thinning were not typically candidate.
Yeah, I think the key with transplant surgery is to really pick patients who, at a minimum, have stability. They don't have active hair loss.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have someone who, even if it's, a slow type of loss,
Right.
but they're continuing to experience it, they're just not a good candidate. And for many women, that is the case. They're much harder to stabilize compared to men. So that's a big part of it. I think if you wait long enough where you have the same pattern that's been there for decades, nothing's changing, and your recipient area is not massive. Like there's just maybe some frontal loss, behind the hairline that's discrete, that is manageable with, 2,000 grafts or something that doesn't require a massive investment from the donor area. I think it's reasonable, and those are well-selected patients.
Yeah, carefully selected.
But exactly. But I agree with you. If you just start transplanting every woman who's coming in experiencing diffuse loss.
And some doctors will.
Oh, of course.
Some doctors will.
Of course, yeah. And so then you run into problems, and then I always think about, what is my patient going to say, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? I don't want them to regret the decision. Like that, for whatever reason, matters to me. I might be retired. I might.
Of course it matters.
Complete, but it's like legacy.
Well, it also speaks to your character. It speaks that you care. This is not just, you care about what you do.
Yeah.
Not just for today, 20 years from now.
For sure. And sometimes it's saving patients from themselves. I have patients, men with, standard male pattern loss, but they're advanced 5, 6, 7 on Norwood scale, and, they think it's a one and done. I'm just going to have one surgery and everything's going to be fine. I'm like, that's not how it works, So if they don't want to start on the journey, if they don't understand what this is about, now we're not going to bring them back to their original state and all these things. And for me, it's not worth even getting, on that journey with them because they're going to end up unhappy,
They're probably not realistic expectations.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, you need also that in wigland, people should have realistic expectations. I think that's a universal thing that when you're dealing in any part of hair, like people think you're going to put a wig on your head and somehow they forgot that you put a wig, like it's going to be growing out of their head. So they're disappointed when they find out it's a wig on their head, let's say they saw people wearing wigs and like, this is going to be my holy grail. Then they got their wig, they put it on their head and they're like, what's this thing is this is a wig on my head. Yeah. Of course it's a wig on your head. They weren't able to kind of connect the two.
And then the maintenance elements too, right? Because they may know that you have to do something about it, but then when you actually have to do it, it's like, oh wait, like that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And some people might not be prepared for that. Same thing with men who are getting, the standard hair transplants. Usually medical therapy is involved, or should be involved. If it's not, it probably should be. And, for many guys, they're like, well, I'm already getting the transplant. I'm paying, a lot of money. Like, why should I also take a medication? But they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, you also want to keep the hair that you transplanted.
Totally. So, yeah. And I always tell them like we have to build on like a solid foundation because my design won't make sense if you lose all this other hair around where we work.
It's not going to work anymore.
And it's not going to look right. So basically, any way you slice it, it's not like a one and done. Whether you're getting a wig, whether you're getting a transplant, you've got to do these other things to maintain the overall look.
Yes, you do.
And that's an investment of not just money, but
it's
time, energy, emotion. Yeah. So it's that compared to like just doing nothing or shaving your head or just riding out the loss and just sporting it. But then you have to deal with, society and all of that. So it's difficult. I mean, I think most people at one point or another in their life, men and women, have to contend with these issues with their hair loss. It's very rare for someone to not have any of it, as they go on. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then one question I had for you was on the topic of like, let's say there was a cure for our hair loss, like your type of hair loss, my type of hair loss.
I'll take my wig off too, so we can be sitting here.
Oh, sure. There we go.
We can be twinning.
Exactly. It's awesome. You look great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's say there was a cure with like, let's just theoretically say no side effects. We know that's not happening.
Like if there's a cure,
like cloning.
Okay.
Let's say cloning that's inexpensive. That's
reasonably priced for everybody to be able to afford.
Yeah, because that's what people don't realize. They're like, oh, when cloning comes out, it's gonna be so expensive that like 0.0001% of the population will be able to actually afford it for a long time. And I don't know. People they think it's just going to be like, okay, now like that's like McDonald's open for business. No. Even when it's a real thing, it's going to take a long time for the price to drop. But let's say that exists today, and you can get it done, and it's low risk, and the hair will grow. It'll be like as if we were 16 again. The question I have for you is like, would you do it?
If I had the possibility to get my hair back?
Yeah, with everything that, we
after
do
everything
online.
Everything I've been through after this whole thing?
After this whole thing of like the platform and educating people and with ups and downs.
Is that where I sign up for it? Is that the paper I sign up for it?
I don't. I wish I had. Like, I just came back from Morocco,
but to answer your question, if you had the paper and there's the dotted line, after everything I've been through, and I've been through a lot, if I had the possibility to get my hair back, 10,000%. Yep, I would do that.
That's fair. Yeah, I wrote that question down this morning, and I was thinking about like, I don't even know what my answer is, to be honest with you. There is a JAK inhibitor medication that is not risk-free.
Olumiant, it was offered to me.
Yeah. I mean, I know what could happen on it, and I realize that most of that data is from the rheumatoid arthritis literature, and it's a different population, but I don't really want to subject myself to those, blood clots and potential blood cancers. And I don't know. I think I'm good, but if those risks were not there.
Yeah, if they're without the risk.
Yeah. And most dermatologists, who actually prescribe it, they're like, that stuff's really like rare, especially for, the hair loss patients who are getting on it. But they're there. I think the risk is really there, and it is suppressing your immune system. I mean, it's got to have some potential issues. So, but if that was not there, I don't know. It's been an interesting journey for sure. And there are some days when I look at myself in the mirror and I just don't love what I see. I'm just like, doesn't feel like me. It just feels like this other kind of.
That's why I feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel the same. Like, I'm fine being this way. I can go out to dinner like this way, but do I feel the same this way as I feel in hair? No. I feel like it completes everything. Like, it also makes my clothes look different, by the way. Like, certain clothes look just strange. Like, I look like a pinhead in some things. That when you have hair, it actually just it frames your face, also keeps your head warm. Another benefit of that.
And it protects you from the sun.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, if I don't have my hat with me and I forgot to put sunscreen, let's say, like I get fried, like we were just at a wedding and the ceremony was outside. And thank God, like right before leaving our apartment, I was like, oh, let me just put sunscreen on just in case, And the wedding started at like 6:30, but it was in Westchester, and it was literally everyone was just baking under the sun, like the last of the sun. But it was a hot day, so like,
and you're fair too, so you probably actually burn very quickly.
Oh yeah, and like you can't really wear I don't know. It would have been a little bit weird to wear like a hat to like a kind of a summerish type of wedding that's outside. So thank God I put the sunscreen on, because like it was really hot, and like my neck burned a little bit. And then, because like a few months before, and I didn't have my hat, and I was outside, and I was just like, it was all red, and it was like a real burn. So so there's some protective elements to it, but yeah, so it's a feeling, and I don't know what my answer would be if you gave me that magic thing to sign.
I was just waiting for waiting for the paper to slide across the table.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
To answer, before you finished your sentence, I already had my answer.
Yeah.
Because my hair, as to many people, it meant everything to me.
Yeah.
So it's not like I love wearing. Like I said, I don't love wearing wigs. I don't love shaving my head. And I've been through to hell and back several times over. But I've been to hell and back several times over, but if I had the opportunity to now have my hair back for the next half of my life, I would do it. I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime. Right. So I'm at peace. I'm at peace with this.
Right.
I'm at peace with this. I'm fine with it. I'm good. But I mean, if you're going to be throwing around hair coming back, I'm going to be like,
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, I think, and what I try to do with my channel is to, really, I mean, many times not push plastic surgery on people, but the opposite. I talk about its risks. I talk about other problems that can come about with different procedures. But at the end of it, I tell people, like, you just have to try to be as comfortable in your skin as possible. And sometimes the answer is plastic surgery. Sometimes the answer is wigs. Doing something about it can be part of the answer. But sometimes for some people, it's really deciding to just do nothing, and maybe therapy, maybe just whatever it takes. Or maybe some people just love themselves no matter what, and that's a beautiful thing. And so, I think that really is the most critical,
I've seen a
part of it.
spectrum on that. I've seen women that they did try, they tried to do the wig.
Yeah.
They give it a shot. It wasn't for them. And they ended up shaving their head, and they're choosing, there's no treatment. They don't want to do it. They did all the treatment. Most women have already done all the treatments. Didn't work. They did the wig. Doesn't work for them. It's just not for everybody.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be okay with this. So they do shaved head forever. No, nothing. That's their choice. That's their path. It's like there's no one thing that every single person has to do. You could do a couple things. You could do all of it. You could do none of it. There is something, though. I feel like there's a way for everybody to make this work in their life, and it's finding that way to make it work that will set us free.
Yeah, and I think the ability to bring people together and create a community like you've done, I think is really awesome. I try to do that through this YouTube channel, and it's great. It's a great way for people to connect and to bond, and I hope that people will continue to be as supportive as they can be. And usually it's the folks with these random numbers and letters in their username that are writing nasty things. I find that the more people use their real names or something close to it, or at least something that identifies them to like who they are,
they're less likely.
They're less likely to say nasty stuff. And it really, it's sad. It stems from like some insecurities that they might have. I mean, anytime someone has to put someone else down is like really, there's something wrong in their lives. Something has to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So hopefully people keep spreading positivity, and we keep helping each other out with whatever it is that gets people to a happier, more content place.
And you do that by putting yourself out there. But I watched actually your videos on JAK inhibitors because I was offered, like I said. But in my situation, doing something like that, which I wasn't willing to do anyway, it only just sticks me back with my original hair. I still have both. I mean, it's not like I have one. I have two. Yeah. So I'm still wearing wigs. So, I mean, the only difference would be maybe I could have a short haircut and would not have a shaved head, but it didn't warrant me taking the medication.
Yeah.
So, it's not like it was just like, oh, you take it. Some people do well on it. I've heard from women that did take Olumiant and then it grew back, but then they stopped taking it and
of course
it fell out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing. This is a commitment.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
With some pretty hard-hitting side effects.
Exactly. And some that I think we don't really even know about yet. It's not like for RA, it's been around for, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years, but we're not talking about 20-30 years yet, So, and especially with universalis or different other alopecias, like usually people are starting when they're younger. And so who knows what will happen on that medication for decades. So yeah, but very interesting. Thank you, Y, for joining me. Thanks for being so open about your story. It's not easy. I think that's what people have to try to understand, that, someone sharing their journey, especially for so many years and the ups and downs, is very, scary and vulnerable. So thank you for being so open about it.
Thank you for having me. I really am excited that we got to do this. I really appreciate you having me on here. I really respect everything you do online. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thanks.